The wedding dress felt like chains against Sophie's skin as she stared at her reflection in the full-length mirror. Each pearl and crystal sewn into the ivory silk reminded her of the weight of her decision, a decision that would save her family, but cost her soul. In less than an hour, she would walk down the aisle to marry Benedict Russell, the man her sister had abandoned just yesterday. "You don't have to do this," her mother whispered, fixing the veil with trembling hands. The morning. Light streaming through the church's preparation room windows cast shadows across her tear-stained face. Sophie's heart clenched. "Yes, I do." She touched the delicate lace at her wrist, remembering the first time she'd seen Benedict 8 months ago. Even then, before her sister had caught his attention, Sophie had felt drawn to his quiet strength, the way he carried his blindness with dignity rather than shame. The Russell family's investment is the only thing that can save Dad's company. Without it, she left the sentence unfinished. They both knew what bankruptcy would mean. Her phone buzzed again, another message from her sister Olivia. Sophie ignored it, just as she'd ignored the previous dozen. What could Olivia possibly say to justify running away with her secret lover the night before her wedding? The scandal would destroy both families if anyone discovered the truth. A knock at the door made them both jump. 5 minutes, the wedding coordinator called out. Sophie's mother gripped her shoulders. "Benedict is a good man. He doesn't deserve this deception." "I know." The words caught in her throat. She'd spent countless nights thinking about him, watching how tenderly he treated Olivia, wishing she could be the one receiving his gentle touches and kind words. Now she would be, but through a lie that made her stomach turn. "He'll never," Sophie whispered, more to convince herself than her mother. "His blindness. It's our salvation and our curse. He won't realize I'm not her." Their voices were identical. That had always been a source of amusement growing up. Now it was their shield. Sophie had practiced for hours, perfecting Olivia's slight Boston accent, her way of laughing, her mannerisms. The physical differences between them were subtle enough that only those closest to them could tell them apart. "The guests are waiting," her mother said softly. "Last chance to back out." Sophie stood straighter, squaring her shoulders. "Dad's heart condition won't survive bankruptcy. Neither will our family's reputation." She kissed her mother's cheek, tasting salt. Sometimes love means sacrifice. The walk to the church's main doors felt endless. Each step echoed against the marble floor, a countdown to the moment that would change everything. Through the wood, she could hear the murmur of 300 guests, the soft swell of organ music, the rustle of anticipation. Her father waited by the doors, his face ashen but determined. "Sophie," he began, but she shook her head. "Don't. Please." She took his arm, feeling how it trembled beneath his suit jacket. "Just walk me down the aisle, Daddy, like you always promised." The doors opened. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting rainbow shadows across the sea of faces that turned to watch her. But Sophie saw only Benedict, standing tall and handsome at the altar, his unseeing eyes directed forward with perfect posture. Her heart stumbled. Even now, knowing what she was about to do, she couldn't help but admire him. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his tuxedo immaculate. The slight tilt of his head betrayed his attention to the sounds around him, a habit she'd noticed months ago during family dinners. With each step down the aisle, memories flooded back. Benedict asking Olivia about her favorite books, his fingers tracing the spines of novels while Sophie sat quietly nearby, wishing she could tell him about her own love of classical literature. The way he'd smile whenever someone entered a room, using his other senses to identify them. The gentle strength in his hands when he'd accidentally bumped into Sophie in the hallway once, steadying her with a touch that had left her skin tingling for hours. She reached the altar. Her father placed her hand in Benedict's, and Sophie felt the warmth of his skin against hers. A jolt of electricity shot through her arm, making her breath catch. "You're trembling," Benedict whispered, concern evident in his voice. Sophie swallowed hard. "Just nervous," she replied in Olivia's practiced tones. His thumb stroked across her knuckles, a gesture of comfort that nearly broke her resolve. Don't be. I may not be able to see you, but I know your heart. That's all that matters. The irony of his words stabbed through her like a knife. Sophie blinked back tears as the minister began to speak. The ceremony passed in a blur of traditional words and solemn promises. When Benedict slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, just like Olivia's, Sophie felt its weight like a brand of guilt. I now pronounce you husband and wife. Benedict's kiss was gentle, proper for a church ceremony, but even that brief touch left Sophie dizzy with a mixture of desire and shame. She'd dreamed of this moment, but not like this. Never like this. The reception was a whirlwind of congratulations and carefully orchestrated moments. Sophie played her part perfectly, accepting good wishes with Olivia's characteristic charm. But each time Benedict touched her, a hand at the small of her back, fingers entwined during their first dance, she felt the double-edged sword of pleasure and pain. It wasn't until they reached the privacy of the limousine that Sophie allowed herself to breathe. Benedict sat beside her, his cane folded neatly across his lap, his expression thoughtful. You've been quieter than usual today, he observed, turning his face toward her. Is everything all right? Sophie studied his profile, the strong jaw, the slight crease between his brows that appeared when he was concerned, the eyes that saw nothing but conveyed everything. Just overwhelmed, she answered carefully. It's been an emotional day. His hand found hers in the darkness of the car. I know we entered into this marriage for practical reasons, he said softly. Your family's business, my company's, expansion plans, but I want you to know something. He paused and Sophie held her breath. I've grown to care for you deeply over these past months, perhaps more than I should given the circumstances. Tears welled in Sophie's eyes. If only he knew he was confessing these feelings to the wrong sister. If only she could tell him that she'd fallen in love with him months ago, watching him, from afar, dreaming impossible dreams. Benedict, she started, but the words died in her throat. What could she say that wouldn't be another lie? He squeezed her hand. We have time. All the time in the world to turn this arrangement into something real. Sophie turned to look out the window, watching the city lights blur through her tears. Yes, they had time, until the truth inevitably came to light, until Olivia returned to claim what she'd thrown away, until Benedict discovered that the woman he'd married wasn't the woman he thought she was. But for now, in the quiet darkness of the limousine, Sophie allowed herself to hold his hand and pretend that their future wasn't built on shadows and lies. Sometimes she told herself love means sacrifice. She just prayed that when the time came, Benedict would understand that her deception had begun with love, not for herself, but for her family. And perhaps, if fate was kind, that love would be enough to survive the truth. The Russell mansion loomed before them like a mountain of expectations. Sophie stood frozen in the circular driveway, her small suitcase clutched in her trembling hands, as Benedict's driver unloaded their luggage from the town car. After a week-long honeymoon at a private beach house, carefully orchestrated to maintain her deception, this would be her new home. Richard can handle the bags, Benedict said, his voice cutting through her anxiety. He stood beside her, one hand extended. Would you like a tour? Sophie swallowed hard. You're going to give me a tour? The words slipped out before she could stop them, genuine surprise breaking through her carefully maintained facade. Benedict's laugh was warm and rich. I may be blind, but I know every inch of this house. I redesigned it myself after the accident. His unseeing eyes crinkled at the corners. Besides, I've been told I'm an excellent guide. Taking his offered hand, Sophie felt the now familiar spark of connection. His fingers were warm and sure against hers, and she allowed him to lead her up the granite steps to the massive front door. The foyer has 30-foot ceilings, Benedict explained as they entered. His shoes clicked against the marble floors, the sound echoing upward. There's a crystal chandelier that catches the morning light. At least that's what everyone tells me. A hint of wistfulness colored his tone. Sophie looked up, watching the light fracture through the crystal drops. "It's beautiful," she whispered, then quickly added, "just like I remember from our engagement dinner." She'd been there that night, of course, but as herself, the quiet sister watching from the shadows while Olivia commanded the room. Benedict's thumb brushed across her knuckles. "You sound different when you're telling the truth," he observed quietly. "More present." Her heart stuttered. Had he noticed something? But Benedict continued moving, guiding her through the house with practiced ease. He showed her the formal dining room with its hand-carved chairs, the library with floor-to-ceiling shelves, "my sanctuary," he called it, and the conservatory where sunlight streamed through walls of glass. "The previous owners used this as a music room," Benedict said as they entered a circular space with perfect acoustics. "Do you still play?" Sophie froze. Olivia had been the musical one, playing violin since childhood. Sophie's talents lay with words and numbers. "I haven't touched my violin in months," she managed, the lie bitter on her tongue. "Perhaps you'll start again." His expression softened. "I miss music sometimes. Real music, not just recordings. The way you can feel it vibrating through the air." Without thinking, Sophie reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. He stilled under her touch, surprise and something else flickering across his features. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice low. "Learning. You," Sophie answered truthfully. For once, she didn't have to pretend. This was her heart speaking, not her sister's script. "The way you learn everything else, through touch." Benedict caught her hand in his, pressing it more firmly against his cheek. "You've never touched me like this before." Because Olivia never had. Because this was Sophie's way of showing affection, not her sister's. The danger of the moment crashed over her, and she started to pull away. But Benedict held fast. "Don't," he murmured. "Please, it's nice. Different, but nice." They stood there in the sunlit conservatory, suspended in a moment of genuine connection. Sophie memorized every detail, the warmth of his skin, the slight roughness of evening stubble beneath her fingers, the way his pulse jumped in his throat. Finally, Benedict cleared his throat. "We should continue the tour. The kitchen staff will have dinner ready soon."
"Staff?" Sophie hadn't expected that. "Do they live here?" "Just Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper, and Carmen, the cook. They have apartments over the garage." He tilted his head. "Is that a problem? I thought we discussed this." Another trap.
Another detail Olivia must have known. "No, of course not," Sophie recovered quickly. "I just thought they might have time off while we were honeymooning." Benedict's tension eased. "Ah, no, they keep the house running whether I'm here or not. Come on, let me show you our wing." Their private suite occupied the entire east wing of the second floor. The bedroom was larger than Sophie's entire apartment, with a sitting area and a balcony overlooking manicured gardens. The bathroom featured a sunken tub and double vanities, and the closet. "This is bigger than my old room," Sophie gasped, then winced at her slip. But Benedict just smiled. "I had it renovated last month. Everything's organized by color and texture. Mrs. Chen helped arrange your clothes while we were away." He ran his fingers along a row of hangers. Silk here, cotton here, woolens at the end. The drawers are labeled with raised dots, my own version of Braille. Sophie watched him navigate the space with confidence, her heart aching. He'd put so much thought into making his world accessible, turning darkness into something manageable. How had Olivia walked away from this man? "Thank you," she said softly, "for thinking of everything." Benedict turned toward her voice. "It's what partners do, isn't it? Make space for each other." He stepped closer, and Sophie's breath caught. "I know this marriage started as a business arrangement, but this past week..." He trailed off, uncertainty crossing his face. "What about it?" Sophie prompted, her heart racing. You're different, more open, more… He searched for the word. Real, like you've stopped performing and started being yourself. Terror and hope warred in Sophie's chest. Is that… good? Benedict's hand found her waist, drawing her closer. Very good, he murmured. I feel like I'm finally getting to know you. The irony of his words struck Sophie like physical pain. He was getting to know her, the real her, but he thought she was someone else. Every genuine moment between them was built on a foundation of lies. Benedict, she started, not sure what she was going to say. But at that moment, a discreet knock interrupted them. Dinner is served, Mr. Russell, Mrs. Chen's voice called through the door. Benedict stepped back, the intimate moment broken. We should change. Mrs. Chen is very particular about proper dinner attire. He smiled. She's been keeping me civilized since before I lost my sight. Sophie watched him move confidently through the closet, selecting a fresh shirt by touch. How many more moments like this could she steal before reality caught up with them? How long before Olivia returned to claim the life she'd abandoned? As she changed for dinner, Sophie caught her reflection in the massive mirrors. She looked the same as always, perhaps a bit more tired, a bit more haunted. But inside she was changing. Every hour spent with Benedict pulled her deeper into a web of her own making. Every genuine laugh, every honest moment, every touch that sparked with real connection. They were all stepping stones leading her further from the shore of redemption. But as Benedict offered his arm to escort her to dinner, his smile warm and trusting, Sophie couldn't bring herself to regret it. Not yet. Not when pretending to be Olivia was letting her be more herself than she'd ever been before. The irony would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. 2 weeks into their marriage, Sophie discovered Benedict's morning ritual by accident. Unable to sleep, she'd wandered down to the kitchen before dawn, only to find him already there. He sat at the marble island, fingers moving across papers covered in raised dots, a cup of coffee cooling beside him. You're up early, he said without turning, and Sophie wondered how he always knew when she was near. Couldn't sleep? No. She hesitated, then asked, What are you reading? Financial reports. My assistant converts them to Braille. He gestured to the empty stool beside him. Join me? Sophie settled next to him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. You do this every morning? Since the accident. His fingers continued their dance across the page. The market waits for no man, blind or otherwise. Besides, a wry smile touched his lips. Lawrence is circling. Lawrence? The name was unfamiliar, and Sophie immediately tensed, worried she'd missed another detail she should have known. My CFO. Benedict's expression darkened. He's been pushing for more control since I lost my sight. Thinks a blind man can't run a billion-dollar company. He turned toward her. Has your father mentioned any concerns about the merger? Sophie's heart rate spiked. She knew her father's company was struggling. It was the whole reason for this marriage, but the details were murky. Olivia had never paid attention to the business side of things. He hasn't said much, she answered carefully. You know how he is about business talk. Benedict nodded, but something in his posture suggested disappointment. You used to ask more questions about the company before the wedding. Because Olivia had been playing a part too, Sophie realized. Her sister had probably pretended interest to secure the marriage, another layer of deception to maintain. I'm sorry, she said softly. I guess I've been distracted. Everything feels different now. His hand found hers on the counter. Different good or different bad? Good, Sophie answered without hesitation. Just intense, real. It was the truth, even if he didn't understand its full meaning. Benedict's thumb traced circles on her palm, sending shivers up her arm. I know what you mean these past 2 weeks. He paused, choosing his words carefully. You're not what I expected. Fear and hope tangled in Sophie's chest. What did you expect? Someone more superficial, I suppose. He laughed softly. Don't get me wrong. You were always charming. Always said the right things. But lately there's a depth to you that I never noticed before. The way you describe things to me, the questions you ask, even the books you choose when we're in the library. Sophie's throat tightened. She'd been reading to him in the evenings, unable to resist sharing her favorite classics. It hadn't occurred to her that Olivia might have different literary tastes. Maybe marriage is changing me, she offered weakly. Maybe. Benedict set aside his reports and turned fully toward her. Or maybe you're finally letting me see the real you. The irony of his words hit her like a physical blow. Before she could respond, the kitchen door swung open, and Carmen bustled in. Oh, the cook stopped short. I'm sorry, Mr. Russell. I didn't realize you had company this morning. No apology needed, Carmen. Benedict's hand remained on Sophie's. What's for breakfast? I thought Belgian waffles? Carmen glanced at Sophie. Unless Mrs. Russell would prefer something else? The title still felt foreign. Waffles sound perfect, Sophie managed. Can I help? Both Benedict and Carmen stilled in surprise. You want to cook? Benedict asked, incredulity clear in his voice. Too late, Sophie remembered Olivia's famous aversion to kitchen work. I mean, I could watch, learn. She backpedaled. Quickly. Carmen recovered first. Of course, Mrs. Russell. Always good to learn new skills. For the next hour, Sophie helped Carmen make breakfast, carefully following instructions while Benedict worked through his reports. The domestic scene felt surreal, like a glimpse into the life she could have had if she'd been the one Benedict had chosen originally. Something smells amazing, a new voice announced, and Sophie turned to see a tall man in an expensive suit entering the kitchen. His smile was practiced, his eyes sharp as they took in the scene. Lawrence, Benedict acknowledged coolly. You're here early. Early bird gets the worm, Lawrence replied, his gaze lingering on Sophie. Mrs. Russell, you're looking lovely this morning. And domestic. How unexpected. There was something in his tone that set Sophie's nerves on edge. Would you like some coffee, Mr. Lawrence? She offered, determined to maintain her composure. Please. He settled at the island, pulling papers from his briefcase. Benedict, we need to discuss the Porter acquisition. The board is concerned about the timing. Benedict's jaw tightened. The timing is fine. We've been planning this for months. Yes, but that was before. Lawrence glanced meaningfully at Sophie. Recent developments. My marriage has nothing to do with the company's expansion plans, Benedict said firmly. Lawrence spread his hands. Of course not. But combining a major acquisition with the merger of your new father-in-law's company, it's a lot of balls to juggle, especially given your condition. Sophie's hands clenched around the coffee pot. The subtle disdain in Lawrence's voice made her want to throw the scalding liquid in his face. My condition, Benedict said quietly, hasn't affected my ability to run this company. The numbers speak for themselves. Numbers can be misleading. Lawrence accepted the coffee from Sophie with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Speaking of which, how is your father's company performing, Mrs. Russell? The question was a trap. Sophie could feel it. I try to stay out of business matters, she deflected, using Olivia's practiced disinterest as a shield. Wise choice. Lawrence's smile widened. Family and business can be such a volatile mix, especially when one party isn't being entirely transparent. Sophie's blood ran cold. Did he know something? Had he investigated her? Before she could panic further, Benedict spoke. That's enough, Lawrence. My wife isn't your concern. The Porter acquisition will proceed as planned. His voice left no room for argument. Now, if you'll excuse us, we were having breakfast. Lawrence gathered his papers with practiced efficiency. Of course. We'll discuss this more at the office. He paused at the door. Oh, and Mrs. Russell, do give my regards to your sister when you speak to her. Such a shame she couldn't attend the wedding. The words hung in the air like poison after he left. Sophie's hands trembled as she set down the coffee pot. Don't let him get to you, Benedict said softly. Lawrence enjoys making people uncomfortable. It's how he maintains power. Sophie swallowed hard. Does he know something about Olivia? If he did, he'd have used it already. Benedict reached for her, and Sophie went willingly into his embrace. Lawrence is a shark, but he's our shark, for now. Sophie buried her face in his chest, breathing in his familiar scent. Every day brought new complications, new chances for her deception to unravel. And now there was Lawrence, watching her with those calculating eyes, clearly suspicious of something. I won't let him hurt you, Benedict murmured into her hair. Any of you. Your family is my family now. His protection, freely offered, felt like another weight on Sophie's conscience. How much longer could she maintain this charade? How much deeper would Benedict's pain be when he discovered the truth? But as his arms tightened around her, as Carmen quietly excused herself to give them privacy, Sophie couldn't bring herself to pull away. Not yet. Not when every moment with him felt more real than any truth she'd ever known. The waffles grew cold on the counter, forgotten in the face of larger concerns. But Benedict held her until her trembling stopped, until she could breathe again without fear closing her throat. Sometimes love means sacrifice, Sophie reminded herself. She just prayed she'd have the strength to face the consequences when the time came. Because watching Benedict defend her to Lawrence, feeling the protective strength in his embrace, Sophie realized a terrible truth. She wasn't just pretending to love him anymore, and that would make the inevitable fall so much harder. The autumn rain drummed against the library windows, creating a cozy cocoon around Sophie and Benedict as they sat before the fireplace. 1 month into their marriage, they'd fallen into a comfortable routine. Every evening after dinner, they retreated here, Sophie reading aloud while Benedict listened, his fingers absently tracing patterns on her knee. I cannot fix on the hour or the spot or the look or the words which laid the foundation. It is too long ago. I was in the middle before I knew that I had begun. Sophie read from Pride and Prejudice, her voice soft in the firelit room. Stop there, Benedict said, his hand stilling on her knee. Read that line again. Sophie's heart fluttered. The passage was too close to her own feelings, too revealing. But she repeated it, trying to keep her voice steady. Interesting choice, Benedict mused. I don't remember you being a fan of Austen before. Another slip. Olivia preferred modern, romance novels, not classics. People change, Sophie offered weakly. Yes, they do. Benedict shifted closer, his thigh pressing against hers on the leather sofa. You've changed so much since the wedding. It's like... He paused, searching for words. Like you've shed a skin you were wearing. Become more genuine. More what? Sophie whispered, heart pounding. More someone I could fall in love with. The book slipped from Sophie's fingers, hitting the carpet with a soft thud. Benedict's hand found her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. Your heart is racing, he observed, his other hand settling over her pulse point. Are you afraid? Terrified, Sophie admitted truthfully. Because she was falling too, had already fallen, and the height of that fall would destroy them both when the truth came out. Don't be. Benedict leaned closer, his breath warm against her lips. I know this marriage started as a business arrangement, but something's changed. You feel it too, don't you? Instead of answering, Sophie closed the distance between them. The kiss was different from their chaste wedding kiss, deeper, hungrier, filled with weeks of growing desire. Benedict's hands tangled in her hair as he pulled her closer, and Sophie melted into him, allowing herself this moment of perfect connection. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Benedict rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me tonight, he whispered. They'd maintained separate bedrooms since the wedding, an arrangement that had surprised but relieved Sophie. Now, though, the invitation sent heat coursing through her veins. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice trembling. His answer was another kiss, this one even more devastating than the first. Sophie lost herself in it, in him, forgetting everything but the feel of his hands, the taste of his mouth, the solid warmth of his body against hers. The sharp ring of Benedict's phone shattered the moment. He pulled back with a groan, reaching for the device. "Benedict Russell," he answered, his voice still rough with desire. Sophie watched his expression change as he listened, tension replacing passion, concern creasing his brow. "When?" he demanded. "No, don't do anything until I get there. I don't care what time it is." He ended the call, already standing. "I have to go to the office." "What's wrong?" Sophie asked, following him as he strode toward the door with practiced steps. "Someone's been accessing confidential files about the Porter acquisition. Lawrence thinks it's corporate espionage." Benedict found his coat by touch, shrugging it on. "Anderson will drive me. I don't know how long I'll be." Sophie caught his arm. "Let me come with you." He hesitated. "It could be a long night." "I don't care." She squeezed his arm. "You shouldn't be alone." The smile he gave her was worth everything. "What did I do to deserve you?" The words were like knives in Sophie's heart, but she pushed the guilt aside. "I'll get my coat." The drive to Benedict's office building was tense. Sophie watched rain streak across the windows, thinking of all the nights she'd spent in her own office at her father's company, trying to help him save it. The familiar weight of financial worry settled in her stomach. Lawrence said the files were accessed using executive credentials, Benedict explained as they rode the elevator to the top floor. "Which means either someone's login was compromised, or it's an inside job," Sophie finished. She'd seen enough corporate politics to know how these things worked. Benedict's hand tightened on his cane. "Exactly. The timing is suspicious with the Porter deal so close to closing." The elevator opened directly into a sleek reception area. Lawrence was waiting, his earlier smooth demeanor replaced by barely concealed agitation. "Mrs. Russell," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "I didn't expect you to join us tonight." "My wife has excellent business instincts," Benedict replied before Sophie could speak. "She stays." Lawrence's eyes narrowed slightly, but he nodded. "This way. I've set up in the conference room." As they followed him, Sophie noticed other executives hurrying through the halls, faces grim. The gravity of the situation was clear, in their hushed voices and worried glances. The conference room was a war zone of papers and laptops. Lawrence pulled up a series of documents on the main screen. "The access occurred at 3:47 p.m., he explained. "Someone downloaded everything we have on Porter, financials, strategy documents, even the preliminary merger paperwork." "What about the merger with my father's company?" Sophie asked before she could stop herself. "Was that information compromised too?" Lawrence gave her a sharp look. "Interesting that you'd ask about that specifically." "Lawrence," Benedict's voice held, a warning. "It's a valid question," Lawrence pressed, "especially given the timing. Your sister disappears right before the wedding, then suddenly we have a security breach affecting both deals." Sophie's blood ran cold. "What are you implying?" "Nothing. Yet." Lawrence turned to Benedict. "But you have to admit, the coincidences are piling up. And Mrs. Russell here seems surprisingly well-versed in business matters lately, despite her previous disinterest." "That's enough." Benedict's voice was deadly quiet. "My wife is not under suspicion here." "No?" Lawrence
pulled up another document.
"Then perhaps you'd like to explain why the compromised login credentials belong to Robert Maxwell, your father-in-law's CFO." The room spun around Sophie, her father's company executive involved in corporate espionage. It didn't make sense. Unless... "When was the last time anyone heard from Robert?" she asked, dreading the answer. Lawrence's smile was predatory. Funny you should ask. He hasn't been seen since your wedding day. Right around the time your sister vanished, in fact. You think they're working together? Sophie whispered, the pieces falling into place. Olivia and Robert. The thought had crossed my mind. Lawrence turned to Benedict. Your runaway bride and a missing CFO, both with access to sensitive information about both companies. It's quite a coincidence. Benedict's knuckles were white around his cane. If you're suggesting my wife had anything to do with this, of course not, Lawrence cut in smoothly. I'm merely pointing out that someone seems very interested in both the Porter acquisition and your new family connections, someone with insider knowledge. Sophie's mind raced. Had Olivia orchestrated all of this? Was her disappearance part of a larger scheme? And Robert? She'd always thought he was loyal to her father. We need to call the police, she said firmly. Both men turned toward her in surprise. If Robert is missing and accessing files illegally, that's a criminal matter, Sophie continued, drawing on years of business experience she wasn't supposed to have. And we need to alert Porter's board before they hear about this elsewhere. Lawrence's eyebrows rose. My, you really have changed since the wedding. My wife is right, Benedict said, pride evident in his voice. Make the calls, Lawrence, and get our cybersecurity team working on tracking those downloads. As Lawrence left to comply, Benedict reached for Sophie's hand. You're trembling again. I'm worried, she admitted. If Olivia's really involved in this... Hey. He pulled her close, uncaring of the glass walls and curious eyes outside. Whatever your sister has done, it's not your fault. You're here. You stayed. That's what matters. Sophie buried her face in his chest, hiding her tears. If he only knew the truth, that she was just as much a liar as Olivia, that every moment of their growing love was built on deception. But now there was more at stake than just their hearts. If Olivia and Robert were really conspiring against both companies, the damage could be catastrophic. And Sophie was trapped in the middle, playing a role she never wanted, holding secrets that could destroy everything. As the rain continued to fall outside the towering windows, Sophie clung to Benedict and prayed for strength. Because sooner or later all the lies would come to light, and when they did, she might lose more than just the man she'd grown to love. Sophie woke to unfamiliar warmth and the steady sound of a heartbeat beneath her ear. Disoriented, she blinked in the pre-dawn light, memories of the night before flooding back. They'd returned from the office after midnight, exhausted and worried, and Benedict had asked her to stay with him. Just to sleep, just to be close. Now, wrapped in his arms, Sophie felt the dangerous perfection of the moment. His breathing was deep and even, one hand curled protectively around her waist. She allowed herself to study his face in sleep, the dark sweep of his lashes, the slight furrow between his brows that even rest couldn't completely smooth away. You're watching me, Benedict murmured, his voice rough with sleep. Sophie started. How did you know? Your breathing changed. His hand tightened on her waist, drawing her closer. And I can feel you thinking. I didn't mean to wake you. I'm glad you did. He shifted, rolling them so she was trapped beneath him, his weight braced on his forearms. Last night, before the phone call. Sophie's heart thundered. Yes? Instead of answering, he lowered his head to kiss her. Without the urgency of the night before, this kiss was a slow exploration, deep and thorough. Sophie wound her arms around his neck, letting herself get lost in the sensation. When they finally broke apart, Benedict rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me, he whispered. Not just for now. Move your things in here. Share my life completely. Benedict. Sophie's voice caught. Everything she wanted was being offered, but the price was more lies, deeper deception. Unless I'm misreading this, he said, uncertainty creeping into his tone. If it's too soon. Sophie silenced him with another kiss. You're not misreading anything, she breathed against his lips. Because that at least was true. Whatever else was false, her feelings for him were real. His answering smile was brilliant. Then say yes. Yes, Sophie whispered, knowing she was sealing her fate but unable to resist. Yes to everything. What followed was a revelation of touch and taste, of whispered words and shared breaths. Benedict mapped her body with careful hands, learning her through touch the way he learned everything else. Sophie surrendered to his exploration, to the overwhelming tenderness of his attention. When they finally came together, it was with a sense of inevitability, of coming home. Sophie spoke his name like a prayer, and Benedict held her like something precious, something real. Afterward, tangled in sheets and each other, reality began to creep back in. Benedict's phone buzzed on the nightstand. Lawrence, he sighed, reaching for it. What? Sophie watched his expression darken as he listened. When did they find him? No, don't release any statements yet. I'll be there in an hour. What's wrong? Sophie asked as he ended the call. They found Robert's car abandoned at Logan International Airport. Benedict sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Security footage shows him boarding a flight to the Cayman Islands the day after the wedding. Sophie's blood ran cold. The same day Olivia disappeared. The same day, Benedict confirmed grimly. Lawrence is convinced they're working together, planning some kind of hostile takeover using the stolen information. But why? Sophie sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest. What could they possibly gain? Think about it. Benedict's voice was heavy. If both deals fall through, Porter and your father's company, our stock price would plummet. Someone with inside information could make a fortune betting against us, and with your father's company vulnerable. A hostile takeover would be easy, Sophie finished, horror dawning. Years of watching her father build his company, of working behind the scenes to help him succeed, made the scenario terrifyingly clear. They could strip the assets for pennies on the dollar. Benedict turned toward her sharply. You understand corporate raiders' tactics remarkably well. Sophie's heart stopped, another slip. I've been paying more attention lately. Since the wedding. I want to understand your world. His expression softened. You continue to surprise me. He leaned in to kiss her softly. I need to shower and get to the office. Will you come with me again? Of course. Sophie watched him navigate the room with practiced ease, disappearing into the bathroom. As soon as the water started running, she reached for her phone with trembling hands. No messages from Olivia, no trace of her sister since that last text before the wedding. But now, knowing about Robert's flight, Sophie looked at their past, conversations with new eyes. Had there been signs? Hints of what Olivia was planning? A notification popped up, a news alert about her father's company. The stock was down 15% in pre-market trading on rumors of the CFO's disappearance. Sophie's chest tightened. Everything they'd worked for, everything they'd sacrificed for. The bathroom door opened, and Benedict emerged with a towel slung low on his hips. Despite the situation, Sophie's breath caught at the sight of him. Like what you see? He asked with a knowing smile. Always, Sophie answered honestly. She rose from the bed, wrapping the sheet around herself. I should get ready too. But Benedict caught her arm as she passed, pulling her against his damp chest. Last night, this morning, it meant something to me. Something real. Sophie closed her eyes against sudden tears. It meant everything to me. His kiss was gentle, full of promise. We'll figure this out. Whatever your sister and Robert are planning, we'll stop them. Together. Sophie nodded against his chest, unable to speak, because she was part of the lie too, wasn't she? Different motives, different goals, but still a deception. They dressed quickly and headed to the office, where Lawrence was waiting with grim news. The Porter deal was wobbling, their board nervous about the security breach. Sophie's father's company stock had fallen another 10%, and there were whispers in the financial press about Benedict's leadership. The vultures are circling, Lawrence announced, spreading newspapers across the conference table. Questions about whether a blind CEO can handle a crisis of this magnitude. Suggestions that maybe it's time for new leadership. They won't succeed, Sophie said fiercely. forgetting for a moment that she wasn't supposed to understand corporate politics. Benedict's track record speaks for itself. Lawrence's eyebrows rose. Does it? The two biggest deals of his career are imploding. His bride's sister is missing with company secrets, and his father-in-law's CFO has absconded to a non-extradition country. Not exactly a sterling recommendation. That's enough, Benedict cut in, but Sophie was already moving. She snatched up the financial reports, scanning them quickly. Look at the trading patterns, she said, forgetting to maintain her facade, in her anger. Heavy short selling started 2 days before the wedding. Someone knew this was coming. Someone inside. She trailed off, realizing both men were staring at her. Benedict with surprise, Lawrence with calculated interest. Fascinating, Lawrence drawled. It seems both Russell brides have hidden depths, though perhaps not the same ones. What are you implying? Benedict demanded. Only that your wife seems remarkably well versed in corporate finance for someone who supposedly had no interest in business. Lawrence's smile was sharp, almost as if she were someone else entirely. Sophie's world tilted on its axis. He knew. Somehow Lawrence had figured it out. The question was, what would he do with that knowledge? You're overstepping, Lawrence, Benedict warned. Am I? Lawrence gathered his papers. Just doing my job, protecting the company's interests. Speaking of which, the board has called an emergency meeting for this afternoon. They'll want answers, Benedict, about everything. After he left, Benedict reached for Sophie's hand. Don't let him rattle you. Lawrence enjoys creating chaos. It makes him feel powerful. Sophie squeezed his fingers, fighting back tears. Because Lawrence wasn't creating chaos this time. He was uncovering a truth that would destroy everything she held dear. And as the morning sun climbed higher over the city, Sophie faced a terrible choice. Continue living the lie and help Benedict save both companies, or confess everything and risk losing not just him, but everything both their families had built. The truth, she was learning, could be just as destructive as lies. The boardroom felt like a courtroom, with Benedict at the defendant's table and 12 stern-faced executives serving as judge and jury. Sophie sat beside him, her hand clasped tightly in his beneath the polished mahogany table. The numbers don't lie, Lawrence was saying, his presentation displayed on the massive screen behind him. Our stock has dropped 30% in 3 days. The Porter acquisition is hanging by a thread. And now there are questions about the security of all our sensitive information. Questions you seem eager to raise, Benedict replied coolly. His posture was perfect, his unseeing eyes directed forward with unwavering confidence. But Sophie could feel the tension in his grip. I'm not the only one raising them. Lawrence clicked to the next slide. The financial press is having a field day. Russell empire crumbling? Blind CEO loses grip on company? The market has lost confidence, Benedict. And confidence, once lost, is hard to regain. One of the board members, a silver-haired woman Sophie recognized as Victoria, Chen leaned forward. What exactly are you proposing, Lawrence? A temporary change in leadership. Lawrence's voice was smooth as silk. Just until this crisis is resolved. Benedict would retain his position as chairman, of course, but day-to-day operations would be handled by someone with fewer challenges. You mean someone who can see, Benedict said flatly. I mean someone who isn't personally compromised by this situation. Lawrence turned to the board. Benedict's judgment is clouded by family loyalty. His wife's sister is implicated in corporate espionage. His father-in-law's company is bleeding value by the hour. How can he make objective decisions? Because it's my company. Benedict's voice cut through the murmurs of agreement. My father built it from nothing. I've run it successfully for 5 years since losing my sight. One crisis doesn't erase that track record. One crisis could destroy everything your father built, Lawrence countered. And let's be honest, the signs were there before this. Small mistakes, delayed decisions. The board has been patient, but perhaps that patience has become a liability. Sophie couldn't stay silent any longer. What mistakes? She demanded, forgetting her role in her anger. Third quarter profits were up 20%. The Asian expansion exceeded projections. The only deals showing weakness are the ones you've been directly involved with, Lawrence. A heavy silence fell over the room. Sophie felt Benedict's hand tighten on hers in warning, but she was too furious to stop. In fact, she continued, pulling up financial data on her tablet, if we look at the trading patterns before the security breach, there are some interesting anomalies. Heavy short positions taken through shell companies. Option contracts that would only pay off if both deals failed simultaneously. Almost as if someone knew what was coming. Lawrence's smile turned, predatory. My, such detailed analysis from someone who until recently claimed to have no head for business. Tell me, Mrs. Russell, where did you develop such expertise? Certainly not from your previous position. The threat in his words was clear. Sophie's heart raced, but she held his gaze. I've been learning, for Benedict's sake. Have you? Lawrence turned back to the board. Or have you been playing a role all along, just like your sister? That's enough. Benedict's voice cracked like a whip. My wife is not on trial here. Isn't she? Lawrence raised an eyebrow. Everything started unraveling the day you married her. Or should I say, the day you married someone? Sophie's blood ran cold. Around the table, board members exchanged confused glances. What exactly are you implying, Lawrence? Victoria Chen asked. Only that things aren't always what they seem. Lawrence's eyes locked onto Sophie. People aren't always who they claim to be. Isn't that right, Mrs. Russell? Or should I use your real name? Lawrence. Benedict's warning was clear. The board deserves to know who they're really dealing with. Lawrence pressed. Especially since our acting CFO discovered some interesting discrepancies in the wedding documentation. It seems certain signatures don't quite match up. Almost as if... The door burst open, cutting him off. Mrs. Chen, Benedict's housekeeper, stood there looking apologetic but determined. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, but there's an urgent situation that requires Mrs. Russell's immediate attention. Sophie started to protest, but Mrs. Chen's expression stopped her. It's about your sister, ma'am. She's here. The room went deathly quiet. Sophie felt Benedict's hand go slack in hers. Go, he said softly. Handle it. I'll deal with things. Here. Sophie hesitated, torn between staying to defend him and facing the confrontation she dreaded for 2 months. Sophie, he whispered, too low for others to hear. Whatever happens, remember this morning. Remember us. Her heart shattered at the use of her real name. He'd known. Somehow, he'd known. Fighting back tears, Sophie rose and followed Mrs. Chen from the room. Lawrence's triumphant smile followed her out. The elevator ride to the lobby was endless. Sophie's mind raced. How long had Benedict known? Why hadn't he said anything? And Olivia? Why return now, when everything was falling apart? The lobby was deserted except for a single figure standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows. Olivia turned as Sophie approached, and for a moment, they studied each other, mirror images with vastly different souls. Hello, sister. Olivia's smile was cold. Enjoying my life? Why are you here? Sophie demanded. Can I check on my dear sister? See how she's enjoying playing house with my fiancé? Olivia moved closer, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Though I hear you've been doing more than playing. Getting quite comfortable in my place, aren't you? Benedict isn't a place to be filled, Sophie snapped. He's a person. A good person who deserved better than you running away with his company's secrets. Olivia's laugh was brittle. Is that what you think happened? Poor, naive Sophie, always seeing the best in everyone, even when they're lying to your face. What do you mean? Did you really think Benedict didn't know? Olivia's eyes glittered. He's blind, sister, not stupid. He knew the moment you said your first words at the altar. Just like he knew about Lawrence's plan to take over the company. Just like he knew about Robert's embezzlement. Sophie's world tilted. What? It was all a trap, darling. A beautiful, elaborate trap. Olivia moved to the windows, staring out at the city below. Benedict needed proof of Lawrence's corruption. He needed someone he could trust absolutely to help him expose the truth. And you? She turned back, smiling. You were perfect. The devoted sister, the secret accountant keeping Daddy's books, the woman who'd been in love with him since the day they met. No, Sophie whispered. He wouldn't. He did. Ask him yourself. Olivia's voice softened slightly. Though I don't think he expected to fall in love with you too. That part wasn't in the plan. Sophie's legs gave out and she sank onto a nearby bench. Then why are you here? Why come back? Because it's time for the final act. Olivia checked her watch. Right about now, Lawrence is trying to convince the board to remove Benedict. Instead, he's walking into a trap 2 months in the making. Federal agents are probably arriving as we speak. As if on cue, a fleet of black SUVs pulled up outside the building. Men in dark suits poured out, badges glinting in the sunlight. My part in this is done, Olivia said, gathering her purse. The rest is up to you and Benedict if you still want it. She headed for the doors, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm glad it was you. He deserves someone who loves him for himself, not his money. Sophie watched her sister walk away, her mind spinning. Above her, 60 floors up, Benedict was either being saved or destroyed, and she had to decide whether to stay and face whatever truth awaited her, or run like Olivia had. But Sophie had never been one to run from hard truths, not even when they threatened to break her heart. Standing on shaky legs, she headed for the elevator. Because whatever game Benedict had been, playing whatever lies they'd both told, one thing had been real: their love. And that was worth fighting for. The elevator seemed to crawl upward, each floor bringing Sophie closer to a confrontation she both dreaded and craved. FBI agents passed her in the hallway, escorting a handcuffed Lawrence toward the ground floor. He didn't even glance her way, his earlier smugness replaced by grim resignation. Outside the boardroom, Victoria Chen stood talking quietly with 2 federal agents. She caught Sophie's eye and nodded toward Benedict's private office. He's waiting for you. Sophie's footsteps felt leaden as she approached the familiar double doors. Through the glass, she could see Benedict standing at the windows, his back straight, his hands clasped behind him. He turned as she entered, tracking her movements with uncanny accuracy. I suppose Olivia told you everything, he said quietly. Not everything. Sophie remained by the door, her heart pounding. She said you knew from the beginning that this was all some elaborate trap for Lawrence. Not all of it. Benedict moved away from the windows, navigating the space with practiced ease. Lawrence's corruption, Robert's embezzlement, yes, I needed to expose that. But you, he stopped a few feet from her. You were never part of the plan. Then what was I? A surprise. A complication. A miracle. His voice softened. The moment you said your vows, I knew it wasn't Olivia. Your voice was the same, but everything else, the way you moved, the gentleness in your touch, the genuine emotion in your words, it was all different. All you. Sophie wrapped her arms around herself. Why didn't you say anything? At first I was curious. I wanted to understand why you'd done it. He took another step closer. Then I realized you were trying to save your family's company, just like I was trying to save mine. And then what? Then I started falling in love with you. The simplicity of his admission took her breath away. Not the role you were playing, but the real you. The woman who reads classics with passion in her voice, who understands business better than half my board members, who touches me like I'm something precious, not something broken. Tears spilled down Sophie's cheeks. I never thought you were broken. I know. Another step closer. That's one of the reasons I love you. You manipulated me, Sophie whispered. Used my feelings for you as part of your plan. No. His hand reached out, finding her cheek, with unerring accuracy. My feelings for you were never part of any plan. They terrified me, complicated everything, made me question whether I could go through with exposing Lawrence when it meant risking losing you. Sophie leaned into his touch despite herself. What changed? You did. Your strength, your integrity. Even while living a lie, you showed. More genuine character than anyone else involved in this mess. I knew you'd want the truth exposed even if it cost us everything. A knock at the door interrupted them. A federal agent entered, looking apologetic. Mr. Russell, we need your official statement. Benedict's hand fell from Sophie's face. Of course, give me a moment. The agent nodded and withdrew. In the silence that followed, Sophie could hear the chaos beyond the office. Voices, footsteps, the sound of justice being served. Lawrence was stealing from the company, Benedict explained quietly. Using inside information to manipulate stock prices, embezzling through shell corporations. Robert discovered it months ago, but instead of reporting it, he tried to blackmail Lawrence. They've been working together ever since, planning to take control of both companies. And Olivia? She found out accidentally. That's why she ran. Lawrence threatened her. His expression darkened. She's been helping the FBI build their case, feeding them information from hiding. Her disappearance was protection, not betrayal. Sophie absorbed this, pieces falling into place. The security breach, the stolen files, it was all staged? We needed proof of Lawrence accessing confidential information. The FBI has been monitoring everything. He paused. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you. We couldn't risk Lawrence suspecting anything. So everyone was playing a part. Sophie said bitterly. Olivia the runaway bride. You the suspicious husband. Me the replacement wife. Was anything real? Benedict moved with sudden speed, pulling her into his arms. This is real, he whispered fiercely. Every moment with you, every touch, every conversation. That was all real. I started falling in love with you the day you helped that blind child in the park, 6 months before the wedding. Sophie stiffened in surprise. You knew about that? I was there with my mobility instructor. I heard you reading to him, describing the clouds making him laugh. His arms tightened around her. I asked Olivia about you later, but she just said you were the quiet sister, the one who helped your father with his books. I never imagined that I was falling in love with you too? Sophie pressed her face into his chest, breathing in his familiar scent. Even then, watching you with Olivia, I couldn't help it. You were so different from what everyone assumed, so strong, so capable, so blind? His laugh rumbled under her ear. Human, she corrected. Real. You never let your blindness define you, but you never pretended it didn't exist either. You built a life on your terms. Another knock interrupted them. This time, it was Victoria Chen. Benedict, the press is gathering downstairs. We need to make a statement. He nodded. Give us 5 minutes. After she left, Benedict cupped Sophie's face in his hands. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. I kept secrets, let you believe in a lie. While I was actively living one, Sophie interrupted. We're both guilty of deception. Then maybe we deserve each other. His thumb brushed away a tear. Stay with me. Not as Olivia's replacement, not as part of some corporate strategy, but as yourself. Sophie Maxwell, the woman I love. The board already knows everything. They've known for weeks. Lawrence's crimes were too significant to hide from them. He smiled slightly. They're quite impressed with your financial acumen. By the way, Victoria suggested offering you a position on the audit committee. Sophie gave a watery laugh. You're serious? Completely. His expression sobered. I know we have a lot to work through. Trust to rebuild on both sides. But I meant what I said this morning. Everything we shared was real, at least for me. For me too, Sophie whispered. Even when I was pretending to be Olivia, I was more myself with you than I've ever been with anyone. Benedict's kiss was gentle, full of promise and apology and hope. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. We should go make that statement, Sophie said reluctantly. Together. She laced her fingers through his. Together, they walked hand in hand to the elevator, both aware that everything had changed and yet somehow remained fundamentally the same. Their love, born in deception, but nurtured in truth, had survived its greatest test. As they descended toward the waiting press, Sophie thought about all the lies that had brought them here. Lies told from love, from fear, from desperation. But in the end, it was truth that had saved them. Truth, and the courage to face it together. "Ready?" Benedict asked as the elevator neared the lobby. Sophie squeezed his hand. "As long as I'm with you. Because sometimes love means sacrifice, but sometimes it also means redemption." And Sophie and Benedict had found both in the most unexpected way, through a deception that led to truth and a lie that became their most honest reality. The elevator doors opened to camera flashes and shouted questions, but Sophie wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever came next, they would face it as themselves in the light of truth. And that was worth everything. The media storm that followed Lawrence's arrest was brutal. News outlets ran endless stories about corporate espionage, family drama, and what they called the tale of two sisters. Camera crews camped outside the Russell mansion, hoping to catch a glimpse of the infamous siblings or the blind CEO who had orchestrated one of the biggest corporate sting operations in recent memory. 2 weeks after the arrest, Sophie sat in their bedroom, watching rain streak down the windows while Benedict showered. The morning papers lay scattered across their bed, headlines screaming for attention. Russell redemption. Blind CEO exposes $1 million fraud. Corporate deception. The sister switch that saved 2 companies. Love in the boardroom. How romance trumped revenge. "You're brooding again," Benedict said, emerging from the bathroom. He moved with easy confidence through their room, selecting a suit by touch from the organized closet. "I can feel it from here." "The Porter deal is still in limbo," Sophie replied, trying to keep the worry from her voice. "And Dad's company stock hasn't recovered fully." Benedict paused in buttoning his shirt. "Come here." Sophie went willingly into his arms, breathing in the clean scent of his soap. "I'm sorry. I know I'm obsessing. You're concerned. There's a difference." His hands rubbed soothing circles on her back. "The Porter board meets today. Victoria thinks they'll vote to proceed with the acquisition now that Lawrence's manipulation has been exposed. And if they don't, then we'll find another way to strengthen both companies." He kissed her temple. "Your father's business is already showing signs of recovery. The new CFO you recommended is implementing excellent reforms." Sophie smiled against his chest. After everything came to light, the board had insisted she take an active role in rebuilding her father's company. Her years of unofficial accounting work had prepared her well for the position. "Mrs. Chen asked if we're still hosting the charity gala next week," she said, changing the subject. "Given everything that's happened." "We're not hiding," Benedict said firmly. "The truth is out. Lawrence is facing charges. Olivia has been cleared of wrongdoing. It's time to move forward. The gossip will eventually die down." He cupped her face in his hands. "Unless you're having second thoughts about us?" "Never." Sophie pressed closer. "I just hate that people think I trapped you somehow, that I manipulated my way into your life. Anyone who believes that doesn't know you." His thumb traced her lower lip. "Besides, I seem to recall doing some manipulating of my own." "Different circumstances," Sophie protested, but Benedict silenced her with a kiss. "No more guilt," he murmured against her lips. "From either of us. We both did what we thought was necessary, and it led us here. Together." A knock at the door interrupted them. "Mr. Russell?" Mrs. Chen called. "The Porter board chairman is on the line." Benedict pressed one more quick kiss to Sophie's lips before pulling away. "That's earlier than expected. Join me in the study?" They made their way downstairs, where Benedict took the call on speakerphone. Sophie held her breath as the chairman's voice filled the room. "Benedict, the board has voted." A pause that felt eternal. "The acquisition is approved. We want to move forward as planned." Sophie's knees went weak with relief. Benedict's face broke into a rare, full smile. "Excellent news, James. When can we schedule the final paperwork?" Next week, if you're available. And Benedict? The chairman's voice softened. The board was impressed with how you handled the Lawrence situation. It can't have been easy, suspecting your CFO for months while gathering evidence. I had help, Benedict replied, reaching for Sophie's hand. More than I initially expected. After the call ended, Sophie wrapped her arms around him. Congratulations. Our first victory as a real team, he said, holding her close. No more pretending, no more roles. Speaking of roles, Sophie pulled back slightly. There's something I need to tell you. Benedict tensed almost imperceptibly. What is it? I've been offered a position at Richardson Financial, head of their forensic accounting division. His face remained carefully neutral. A good opportunity. I turned it down. Now he did react, surprise flickering across his features. Why? Because my place is here. Sophie touched his face, feeling him lean into her palm. With you, with our companies, building something real, if you'll have me as a true partner, not just a wife. Benedict's smile was blinding in its intensity. The board already considers you an unofficial member. Victoria's been pushing to make it official. Is that wise, after everything? The shareholders care about results. Our stock has stabilized, the Porter deal is secured, and your father's company is recovering. Plus, his smile turned wicked, you're the only person besides me who can make Lawrence's creative accounting make sense to the FBI. Sophie laughed, then sobered. We should visit him, you know. My father. He's been calling daily, worried about both companies. Dinner tonight, Benedict suggested. We can give him the good news about Porter in person. He'll want to celebrate. Break out the expensive wine he's been saving. Then we'll celebrate. Benedict pulled her close again. We have a lot to be thankful for. They stood together in the study, the morning sun breaking through the rain clouds outside. Sophie thought about how far they'd come. From deception to truth, from arranged marriage to real partnership. A text notification buzzed on her phone. Olivia, checking in from her new life in California. Despite everything, the sisters were slowly rebuilding their relationship. Distance and time were proving to be healing forces. Penny, for your thoughts? Benedict asked. Just thinking about family, Sophie replied. How it can surprise you, change you. Speaking of family, Benedict's voice took on an odd tone. Your mother called this morning. She has some questions about wedding venues. Sophie stiffened. Wedding venues? Apparently she thinks we might want to renew our vows, now that everything's in the open. He paused. She may have a point. Benedict Russell, are you suggesting we get married again? I'm suggesting we do it right this time as ourselves. His hands found her waist. No deception, no hidden agendas. Just us, making honest promises to each other. Tears pricked Sophie's eyes. You're serious? Completely. He rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, Sophie Maxwell. For real this time. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Their kiss was interrupted by Mrs. Chen discreetly clearing her throat. I'm sorry, but the FBI agents are here for your final statements. Reality intruded as it always did, but now, facing the aftermath of their shared deception, Sophie and Benedict stood united. The truth had nearly torn them apart, but it had also set them free. Free to love openly, to trust completely, to build a future on honesty instead of lies. As they walked hand in hand to meet the federal agents, Sophie squeezed Benedict's fingers. He squeezed back, a silent message of support and love. Because sometimes the greatest truths come wrapped in lies, and the purest love grows in the most unexpected soil. They had planted their garden in shadows, but it would bloom in the light. The garden was transformed. Thousands of tiny lights twinkled in the evening air, turning the Russell Mansion's grounds into an enchanted forest. Sophie stood at the French doors, watching the final preparations for tomorrow's vow renewal ceremony, her heart full of an emotion she couldn't quite name. Everything's ready, Olivia said softly, coming to stand beside her. The flowers arrive at dawn, the caterers are confirmed, and the string quartet has their revised playlist. Sophie turned to study her sister. 3 months had changed them both, but Olivia's transformation was the most striking. Gone was the superficial socialite, replaced by someone more grounded, more real. "Thank you," Sophie said, "for helping. With all this, for coming back. Thank you for forgiving me." Olivia's smile was tinged with regret. "I've done a lot of thinking in California, about the choices I made, the person I was. And who are you now? Someone trying to be better." Olivia touched Sophie's arm. "Someone who wants her sister back." Tears threatened, but Sophie blinked them away. "You never lost me. Even when I was furious with you, even when I took your place." "You didn't take my place," Olivia interrupted. "You found yours. The place you were always meant to be." Before Sophie could respond, Benedict's voice came from the doorway. "Ladies, your father's looking for you both. Something about a toast practice?" Olivia squeezed Sophie's hand. "I'll handle Dad. You two take a minute." After she left, Benedict moved to Sophie with unerring accuracy. "You're nervous. Is that obvious? Your breathing changes when you're anxious." His hands found her waist. "Having second thoughts? About you?" "Never." Sophie leaned into his embrace. "It's just, last time we did this, everything was built on lies. Tomorrow is about truth," Benedict finished. "Our truth. What if it's not enough?" The fear that had been gnawing at her finally surfaced. What if, without the drama and deception, we're just ordinary? Benedict's laugh was warm against her hair. "Sophie Maxwell, you have never been ordinary a day in your life." His hands moved to cup her face. "You turned a business arrangement into a love story. You helped expose corporate corruption while falling in love with a blind man who knew you were lying but fell in love anyway. There's nothing ordinary about us." "When you put it that way?" Sophie smiled despite herself. "Besides," he continued, "I have a confession to make." Sophie stilled. "What kind of confession?" "I had planned to tell you this after the ceremony, but..." He took a deep breath. "Remember last month when I went to Boston for those medical consultations? The headache specialists?" Worry crept into her voice. "Not exactly." Benedict's thumb traced her cheekbone. "There's an experimental procedure, new technology combined with stem cell therapy. The doctors think they might be able to restore partial vision in my left eye." Sophie's heart stopped. "What?" It's not a guarantee. The success rate is only 40%, and even then it would be limited vision. Shapes, colors, movement." His voice softened. "But there's a chance I might be able to see you. Actually see you. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I needed you to know something first." His expression grew serious. "Whether this works or not, whether I ever see your face or remain in darkness, it doesn't change us. I fell in love with you through touch and sound and heart. That's more than enough for me." Sophie pressed closer, overwhelmed. When would this happen?" "They want to do it next month. I'll need several weeks of recovery afterward." He paused. "Will you come with me? To Boston? Try and stop me." She kissed him fiercely. "But Benedict?" "You're right. Whatever happens, it doesn't change us. You've never been blind to the things that matter." His smile was radiant. "Like the fact that you've been crying? How did you..." "Your voice gets husky when you cry. It's one of the first things I noticed about you that day in the park with the blind child." He brushed away her tears. "You spoke to him so naturally, without pity or condescension. That's when I started falling for you, even though I was supposed to be courting your sister. And now here we are." "Here we are," he agreed, "getting married again, possibly getting my sight back, building a future neither of us could have imagined a year ago." A knock at the door interrupted them. Victoria Chen stood there, elegant in her evening wear. "Sorry to interrupt, but the rehearsal dinner is starting. Your mother's about to send out a search party. We'll be right there, Benedict promised. After Victoria left, Sophie straightened Benedict's tie. Ready to face the family? Always, as long as you're with. For he caught her hands in his. But first, he pulled her close, his lips finding hers with practiced accuracy. The kiss was sweet and deep, a promise of things to come. When they finally broke apart, Sophie rested her head on his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. I love you, she whispered. Not because of what you can or can't see, not because of business deals or family obligations, just because you're you. And I love you, he murmured back. Not because you saved my company or exposed Lawrence. Not even because you were brave enough to take your sister's place. I love you because you saw me, really saw me from the very beginning. Another knock, more insistent this time. The natives are getting restless, Olivia called through the door. And Dad's breaking out the expensive scotch. They broke apart laughing. We should go, Sophie said reluctantly. Lead the way, future wife. Present wife, she corrected, taking his arm. Forever wife, he countered, making her heart skip. They walked together toward the dining room, toward their waiting families and their shared future. Tomorrow they would make their vows again, this time with complete honesty. Next month would bring new challenges with the surgery. Life would continue throwing obstacles and opportunities in their path. But they would face it all together, with clear eyes and honest hearts. Because sometimes love grows stronger through trials, and the deepest truths are worth waiting for. As they entered the dining room to applause and raised glasses, Sophie squeezed Benedict's arm. He squeezed back, their private signal for I love you. Some things, after all, didn't need to be seen to be perfectly, completely true. 6 months after their vow renewal, Sophie paced the sterile hallway of Boston's Metropolitan Hospital. The surgery had taken longer than expected, and each passing minute stretched her nerves tighter. Her father dozed in an uncomfortable chair, while Olivia kept refreshing the news feeds on her tablet. Lawrence's sentencing was scheduled for today, a coincidence that felt somehow fitting. Mrs. Russell? The surgeon appeared, still in his scrubs. The procedure is complete. Sophie's heart leaped. And? The initial signs are promising, but we won't know the full extent of recovery for several weeks. He smiled kindly. Your husband is asking for you. The recovery room was dimly lit, machines beeping quietly. Benedict lay still, bandages covering his eyes, but his hand reached for hers the moment she entered. Hey, stranger, he whispered. Sophie's fingers interlaced with his. Hey yourself. How do you feel? Like someone's been poking around, in my head. His thumb traced familiar patterns on her palm. Did they tell you anything? Just that it looks promising. She perched carefully on the edge of his bed. We won't know more until the bandages come off. 3 weeks. His other hand found her face. Are you crying? Happy tears, she assured him. Olivia says Lawrence got 20 years. No possibility of parole. Good. Benedict's jaw tightened briefly. Though in a way, we owe him something. If he hadn't pushed so hard to take over, if your sister hadn't run, we might never have found our way to each other, Sophie finished. I know, but we did, and that's what matters. The weeks of recovery tested them both. Benedict was confined to the hospital for the first 5 days, then transferred to a specialized care facility. Sophie split her time between his bedside and video conferences with both companies' boards. The Porter acquisition was proceeding smoothly, and her father's company had fully stabilized under the new management structure. Finally, the day arrived for the bandages to be removed. The doctor insisted on a gradually brightening room to protect Benedict's sensitive eyes, so they waited in near darkness. Ready? The doctor's voice was steady as he began unwinding the gauze. Sophie held her breath. Benedict's hand tightened on hers. Remember, the doctor cautioned, if the procedure was successful, vision will be limited. Shapes, some colors, movement. Managing expectations is crucial. The last bandage fell away. Benedict kept his eyes closed for a long moment. Take your time, the doctor encouraged. The lights will increase very gradually. Benedict's eyelids flickered. Sophie watched, heart pounding, as he slowly opened his eyes. His voice caught. There's light, shadows. His head turned toward her. A shape. Are you? I'm right here, Sophie whispered. The room brightened incrementally. Benedict's good eye focused, unfocused, tried to track movement. Colors, he breathed. I can see. Blue? Are you wearing blue? Tears spilled down Sophie's cheeks. Yes. Your favorite sweater. Over the next hour, as the light slowly increased, Benedict's world expanded in fragments. Not full vision, never that, but more than he'd had in years. Enough to see silhouettes, to distinguish basic colors, to track movement. Your hair, he said wonderingly, reaching out to touch it. It's exactly the shade I imagined. Later, back in their hotel suite, Benedict sat by the window while Sophie handled urgent business calls. The Porter deal's final phase was complete, and the stock prices of both companies had hit record highs. Victoria says the press is already asking for interviews, Sophie reported, ending her last call. They want the whole story, the corporate intrigue, the surgery, everything. Let them wait. Benedict held out his hand. Come here. Let me look at you. Sophie went willingly into his arms. Even with his limited vision, his hand still mapped her face with gentle precision. Funny, he mused, how I can finally see you, but I still need to touch you to really know you're here. Some things are better felt than seen, Sophie replied, making him smile. Speaking of things that need to be felt, his expression grew serious. There's something I've been waiting to tell you. I wanted to be able to see your face when I said it. Sophie's heart skipped. What is it? The latest tests came back. From the fertility clinic. His good eye searched her face. The treatments worked, if you still want to. Are you saying? Joy bubbled up in Sophie's chest. We can start trying. Whenever you're ready. His smile was radiant. I might even be able to see our child's face thanks to the surgery. Sophie kissed him through happy tears. When they finally broke apart, Benedict brushed her hair back from her face. You know what I've learned? He asked softly. True, vision isn't about eyes at all, it's about seeing with your heart, your soul. Is that your way of saying you'd love me even if the surgery hadn't worked? It's my way of saying I've always seen you clearly. His hand found the curve of her waist. From that first day in the park, through all the deceptions and revelations, I saw the real you. And I fall more in love with that woman every day. A knock at the door interrupted them. Olivia, bringing dinner and champagne to celebrate. Should we tell her about the fertility news? Sophie whispered. Let's keep it between us for now. Benedict kissed her temple. Some joy should be private before it's shared. The evening passed in warm celebration. Olivia shared plans for her new charitable foundation, focusing on corporate transparency and ethics. Their father called to report that the last traces of Lawrence's corruption had been cleared from both companies' books. Later, as they lay, tangled in hotel sheets, Benedict traced Sophie's features in the dim light. Can you really see me? She asked softly. Parts of you. Pieces. His touch was reverent. But I've always seen the whole. The brilliant mind that helped expose Lawrence. The brave heart that chose love over safety. The soul that matches mine. So perfectly. Sophie curled closer. I love you. The man you were in darkness. The man you are in light. And I love you. The woman who took her sister's place but showed me her true self. The partner who stands beside me in boardrooms and hospital rooms. He kissed her softly. My past. My present. My future. Outside their window, Boston's lights twinkled like stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, running their companies, planning for their family, navigating Benedict's continuing recovery. But they would face it all together, with clear eyes and honest hearts. Because sometimes love means seeing past surfaces to souls. Sometimes truth comes wrapped in necessary lies. And sometimes the greatest vision comes not from eyes, but from hearts brave enough to see in the dark and strong enough to wait for light. Sophie and Benedict had found their way through shadows to clarity, through deception to truth, through arrangement to love. Their story, which began in darkness and lies, would continue in light and honesty, and that was the clearest vision of all. If true love was born from a lie, would you choose the painful truth or keep the lie to preserve happiness? Leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.